hello, and welcome to
Hello.
the Comedian's Paradise. Yeah, Viv said hello. This is your guest. This is a podcast where we speak to absolutely marvelous mavericks, William the Conquerors, Julius Caesars of the comedy world. Now, today's guest is Viv Gee. She is a maestro that teaches many great comedians in Scotland and is a marvelous comedic genius herself. She's walked all the way from Glasgow to appear on this podcast, and she has a fantastic bookshelf behind her. Please welcome the marvelous, the quantifiable Viv Gee.
That's all going on a poster, by the way, including the bookshelf bit.
Okay, what are you going to quote under the podcast or under me? That's the question.
Oh, right. Both.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good.
Yeah,
And I get the residuals, all right?
exactly. I think I should go with your podcast.
So it's a pleasure to have you, Viv, in the G. So you got the fantastic name, it's Viv is cool, but you got the amazing surname that sounds like a gangster rapper.
It
How
does. You were going to ask me how I got this name. Is that I'm interrupting you. I'm sorry. I am Viv Graham. And when I first started, I wasn't long into doing comedy and I got a gig in Newcastle. And a gangster called Viv Graham had just been murdered. And outside the gig, it said starring Viv Graham. And people were coming and going, "Why are you calling yourself Viv Graham? Who's this? Are you calling yourself Viv Graham? Why would you do that?" So I became Viv G. This is true. Look it up. There's a Viv Graham from Newcastle who was murdered in 1994. Yep. And I had a gig in Durham. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And like, what's made you like the comedian you are today? And how did you become a comedian? And what made you feel like you need to spread your words of wisdom across the comedy world?
Um, Performance wise, I did sort of start as I always wanted to be an actor and did drama school and all this, and but I always wrote sort of funny poems from like my teens, and I realized that I liked when the audience reacted with a laugh
Ah,
because some poems it's just like and you can't tell are they just going I don't know, they swallowed their chewing gum or they're liking it, but with laughter it's so honest and real that you can tell that's worked, that hasn't worked. So I just like that response.
okay. And it's the addiction that got you hooked.
There's an addiction, definitely, isn't there?
What but what made you decide you want to spread the words of wisdom and help comedians become
So
good?
I accidentally fall into everything I do. I didn't decide to. I got asked if I would just. I did a play at the Ramshorn Theatre in Glasgow, which is affiliated with Strathclyde University, who run night classes. And Strathclyde Uni saw me in the play, and a lecturer said, "Would you speak to my undergraduates about performing stand up?" And then a person who run night classes got the idea and says, "Why don't you do stand-up comedy classes?" And I had been doing comedy for about 3 years then and said, "Who am I to teach stand-up?" And then I thought about it and I thought, well, if I was famous, I wouldn't have the time. So who else is going to? So I just decided to do it. And I taught a lot of drama workshops and things. So I knew sort of working with groups and stuff. So I just read loads of books, watched loads of videos, and then witnessed loads of jokes that other people, comedians I knew had ripped off that I'd never realized before till I started watching loads of videos.
Oh,
Yeah, it was quite interesting, including my double act partner who'd ripped off somebody and I didn't know. And we were using the material. So I confronted them on that.
does that still go on quite a lot? Because I mean, there's so many comedians that are quite big and famous around the world, and there's so many jokes out there, and they could easily, you don't know every single joke, and they can
No,
easily reword things. I mean, they could even look at some comedian from India, and then maybe copy their stuff or something. I'm sure it goes on to a degree, but I don't know. I feel that
I
that
think
take.
there's a way you can tell because it doesn't fit in with the rest of their stuff. And sometimes people aren't clever enough to change words. It's like word for word, and it was physical act outs as well, and there was an attitude. There was There was just, you just know. When I teach people, and sometimes they come out with a classic line, and I just think that's not theirs. That doesn't, and I'll Google it, and quite often it's not theirs.
Ah,
You
okay.
can just tell. I mean, yeah, people come up with the same ideas, especially when there's something in the news and we're all coming up with stuff. And that's understandable and it fits in with the style of the comedian and you can just tell. And sometimes you have to bin it, even though you are being original because it's too close to somebody that's well known. But there's some people that are just thieves.
Yes. Assholes.
Yeah, assholes.
But when you're, so they say often when a comedian gets someone to write with them, they're not actually writing for them, they're working with them on an idea. How does that not, what's the dangers? Because when you get someone to work with you on your material, is there a danger that could come across as
No, that's
inauthentic?
completely different. That's completely different. That's You've given them a permission, you're going to use it. And also, I think you get some ideas off the bounce. Like people I'm teaching will say something in class and I'll give them a tag or another punchline after it as an idea. And they'll say, "Oh, that's your joke." And I always say it's not. I got the idea from your joke. I would never have come up with it. It's just that from my years of teaching and performing, my brain's used to coming up with another joke. So I see it as theirs.
Does it help you as a stand-up teaching students?
At first it didn't. I was a worse stand-up when I first started because I started over analyzing myself as I was performing. And I felt nervous with students. I still do a little bit because you've got to, look as good as you teach. You want them to be impressed. Um, and I think it keeps me up to date, especially because I'll keep meeting younger comedians as well, and people from all walks of life, different jobs, and it's good because they'll now there's so many new comedians out there that people are fans of that I'll be introduced to new comedians that I can check out, and it also makes me more kind of keeping up to date with how you structure jokes and helps me to write new stuff as well.
Oh, okay.
Not by stealing their jokes.
But they come into stand up with a completely different mindset and they're fresh. And
Yes,
they
yes. Most people do my, if it's a course where there's a lot of people doing it, they're doing it for a laugh, for fun, to meet people. They don't really intend to be a comedian, but but then as it goes on, they do. They start enjoying it and especially after the first gig, as you get that hit, don't you? Some people come to me as one-to-ones because they really are wanting to build on their set and work on it and do better. But I would say 75% of people that do my courses just are ticking off their bucket list. And then it kind of gets them hooked.
and they keep doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if there's a camaraderie in the class, they'll do it longer.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
that's
quite
interesting.
interesting. It is. Yeah.
How often does it happen?
I would say more often than not, actually. I mean, people fall away as the months and years go by, but there's some classes that for 75% of them are still pals and doing comedy. And there's other classes, maybe one or two. In fact, now over the years, I'd say there's more one or two from each class.
D does the teaching of, does it teach you a lot about comedians per se as people, being a teacher of comedy?
Well, it definitely teaches me a lot about people at the start and how people are. And I would say that most comedians have got a need and a kind of lowish self-esteem that can sometimes come over as a high self-esteem. And I think it is about embracing all our faults, foibles, do you know what I mean? What we're shit at. I think it's like we found something. We weren't good at anything at school, and suddenly we found something that actually that's what all that was about. Because comedy is about celebrating that.
Does that's, yeah, that's one of the things that I love about stand up in that some of the people that I love in stand up, they make fun of the things that they crap at. They're willing to take their weaknesses that you see
Yes,
comedians.
yes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Because people, I mean, much as you like watching acrobatics or people doing amazing stunts, when they do it in comedy, there's something about someone doing it. You know, if someone stands on stage and then does a massive gymnastic routine, you'll just think, what a cunt. But if they do it because you're going to watch gymnastic, fair enough. But you think, well, that's amazing, but where's the funny? It has to be funny.
And so one of the things that I found quite funny in some instances when I watch comedians, they talk about dark things and humiliating things. Like
Mm,
you'd be like, "Oh, I felt like that." Is it? I mean, some great musicians as well. Like when they get you to real feel the emotion, and when someone does a
yeah.
really good set about talking about their life stories or some mad things that happen to them, it makes you reminisce how times you felt like that, and you're like, "Oh, I'm not alone in this. I can laugh at this."
Yes, yes. I think there's both things happen though. Either you relate to it and you laugh at it, or you're not relating to it, but you're really interested in it. So
Ah,
both,
yes.
you know, so you can laugh at both ways, which is the beauty. So everything works if it's funny.
And is joke writing a bit like going to the gym for comedy? Like a lot of the times, like you may not find the joke or be funny when you're there, but if you do the exercise when you get back gigging, you may find something. Because I had that yesterday. I was doing quite badly in the set, but I don't know what happened. I was telling a joke. Should I say the premise of it?
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'll say it. I was saying that I would be funny if religion used food to try and convert people to religion rather than like because I said that I went to a Catholic school. I wasn't Catholic originally, but what
Yeah.
converted me to Christianity was the bread because it tastes delicious. And then I was making jokes saying this and that, and then I was bombing a little bit. I was struggling a bit, but I don't know why. There was a lot of tension. It was really comfortable, but I did do a lot of writing on the paper, and I was working a bit on it,
Yeah.
and the whole day and last few weeks or so. And I don't know. I just found something that saved me from that situation. And I said I was struggling a bit, and everyone felt the tension was awkward. And I said, "Bless these jokes." And then after that,
I like that.
people went for it, and I just started. There was bits where I struggled afterwards, but as soon as I said religious puns, they seemed to just fall for it.
Yeah.
It's really mad, but I think that came through the fact that I was working on jokes, getting the exercise, getting my mind ready, and then that
Yes.
helped for when I got on stage.
I think there's a fight or flight thing kicks in as well on stage where you're in that stage that and I don't know if it's experience, but it's like a comedy fairy just comes to you and gives you something to say and you say it and it saves it because it happens, doesn't it? You just and I do believe that you write your best jokes on stage performing them. So you could write them at home, you could do them, you can try them out. But it isn't until you perform it, whether it's a new material night, which my new material night's called Joke Gym, bizarrely. Um,
Ah.
but so it's the saying it, isn't it? Like when you think about if you do the fringe and the first day compared to the last day show, you think, oh my God, I wish everyone saw it the last day because then that worked and this worked and I didn't say that word. There's just so it is a gym, isn't it? You're working it out. And I think a lot of audiences don't get that though, do they? They sort of they think it should be fully formed and ready right away. And then they say, oh, I saw that before. And you're thinking, yeah, but was it as good last time as it is now?
So there's two things that I found interesting what you said there, and Gareth Berliner said something really good about this. He said, if an audience member, and even if you feel you've done crap, so that they enjoyed your set, just say thank you. Don't say, oh, I did bad, I could have done better. Or
Yes.
if the promoter says anything, just say and you enjoyed yourself, rather than saying anything else. Because then when they see you do even better, it makes you look 10 times better. And I'm butchering what he said, but
No, no,
uh,
no, no, no. I have no idea what I said. So this is good. Now you're making me understand what I said.
and then um, yeah, you were saying about yeah, you were saying about
About,
oh yes, and another comic called Howard Smith said that when you get in a notebook or you start saying it's new material, or you get the phone out, he says that you shat in the swimming pool because you've ruined the illusion that you've said it for the
yeah,
first time.
Adam Bloom sort of says that, doesn't he, in his book about the boom mic moment. Have you
Oh,
read his
okay.
book?
No, not yet.
It's I would say I read just about every comedy book possible, and that is the best and most different one. Did my screen just wave at you?
No,
All
not
right,
quite.
because it's all right, it's all right. Um, and he talks about a boom mic moment where um like when you say things like, oh yeah, this gig or this joke went well last time, you've suddenly destroyed the image. You're suddenly, even though the audience know they're watching a gig and you're in the gig, by you saying I'm at a gig is like the moment in films where you see the boom mic going and suddenly you're
Ah,
reminded this isn't real life. There's this, you know, this has been filmed, this is a studio, this is whatever. So I totally agree with that. I hate as well when people say, all right, that's my time. This kind of thing. Just, say what you're gonna say and finish.
but yeah, and just yeah, just don't ruin the illusion and be professional. But also, oh, what's the other thing as well? They you pointed on another thing, but I've forgotten what it is. Never mind. It'll come back to me.
It'll come back. It'll come back. You can look in the recording. Oh yeah.
As I put it on YouTube. Oh, yeah, and also another question I put to you was, yeah, I've been doing a few theatre courses recently.
Oh
Like
right, excellent.
last year, no, 2 years ago, I went to Philip Golier, and before the pandemic, and I finished that,
Mm.
and I find they're very different to do clowning, and I did a physical theatre course
Oh, amazing.
in January, which when I really admire a lot of the theatre people because I feel that they've got so many things that could help them if as a performer when they do stand up, like understanding of different movements, and it makes
Mm.
you so much more aware of your body. Like
Yeah.
myself, one thing I tend to do is say I'm quite stiff, but and they said that you eat the space, and
Oh
when you're
right.
performing with other people, like if you're drawing too much attention to yourself, you need to. It's a teamwork with the play, and you've got to
That
be.
is exactly my point I was going to make. Yeah, it's about the focus. When you do the teamwork thing, you're saying, when you do a play, you can't keep acting. You've got to know what the story is. What's the point in the story? That the audience should be listening to that person. You should be focusing on them or whatever your director told you to do. If you're doing this and all that, and you're actually, even if it's like a panto and you're trying to upstage and be the funny one, you might get a laugh, but you've ruined the show. You've ruined that scene because it's about the focus. And I think a lot of stand-up comedians, certainly when I perform with other stand-ups on stage, if they've not had the theatre experience, they don't get this idea that when they're speaking, you should make sure the focus goes to them. And also there's the big fourth wall thing, isn't there, with theatre? Like I was always training to be an actor. I went to drama school. Then I got ill and had to drop out for 3 years. And in that interim, I started doing a bit of stand up. And then I went back to college to finish the last 6 months of this course. And it was freaking me out seeing the audience because I just thought I can't eyeball them like I would in stand up. I've got to pretend that I'm looking, but I'm not looking at them. And I couldn't look out the way. I had to just look that way all the time. I didn't know how to look audience wise without looking like I was actually speaking to someone like I would in stand up. It took me a while to get back used to it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's fun. I find that it's interesting, and it's yeah, what you said there about focusing on a partner and the scene. I struggled immensely with that because
Mm.
when it's still and there's not much going on, I would switch off a bit. And then,
No,
so
God.
we're wearing a mask, right? And I'll be switched off, and they'll be in a mask doing their little things, and I'll be, and it will completely dissuade from what they're
Yeah,
doing.
audience can tell. Yeah. Even if you're doing nothing and not moving at all, just like that, you'd become the focus because that's quite interesting.
Ah. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was very interesting. I thought I'd get into it because people in the clowning school talked about this school called Matteo Destra and about understanding body movement. I got a
Right.
little bit better with it, but Viv, I'm terrible. I hope it doesn't get transpired in the wrong way or misconstrued, but I'm not good with my hands. Now that could. I don't want. I'm more of a sort of behind the desk kind of man. I don't know what it is, but I was shoved into it. Like you're forced to be very.
Yeah.
it was a good challenge. Got me out of my comfort zone, so that was good. And
Right.
we had to make a mask, which I made a couple, but yeah, they were interesting. But I hated the mask. Oh no, I like the
I don't
performance.
think I was good at mask work either when I think back. Yeah.
It's yeah, I don't know. I want to perform. I'm making all the I did it as part of the course, and I enjoyed the
Yeah.
camaraderie of the people there. But it was yeah, I wasn't too skilled at it. But what's this way? Oh, it's got a shape in the right way, and they're using all these artistic terms, and they were saying things like the writing, but there is no writing. You're performing on stage, moving your body. But now I understood. I had to ask all these silly terms,
Right.
but they knew what it meant.
Yeah. Yeah. And you kind of got to go along with it, haven't you? Oh yeah. I feel as well though, the beauty about being a stand-up versus being a actor, um, unless you're doing both, is that when you're an actor, you get acting work. And then say you've got, I don't know, 2 months acting work, rehearsing, performing a show, and then suddenly it ends. And it's like you get this complete adrenaline withdrawal and you feel bereft. You miss everyone in the cast, you miss the performing, all this, the buzz. But with stand up, you know what I mean? You're doing 3 or 4 times a week, or every weekend or whatever. You're getting that fix. Theatre is harder that way. You're just like, ah, now what? Just so it's quite,
Mm. Yeah, I like stand up for the reason that you can really iron the tool a lot more. Because it's
yes.
so easy to set up. Well, it's a theatre, you got all the lighting to set up, you got the timing's 100% right. But for the most part, you could get maybe even a karaoke mic, and I would advise against it and an amp in a small little room in a pub. And if you got people
Mm,
there and you got that, you can test stuff out. But with theatre, you got to get all the costumes right. You got to get the
yeah.
lighting right at the right time. You got to move the props at the right time,
Yeah,
and
and you got to get
you got to
rehearsal
pay.
time and absolutely. But what I would say about theatre is that much as when you do a theatre show, say you're doing a 3 weeks run, you will have a better show by the end of the 3 weeks because you've been doing it every night and you're better at it. But it can still be very good the first day because you've done so much rehearsal because you're not necessarily having to worry about the funny. But with comedy, it's not the case. You have to have done it quite a few times for it to be slick and as funny as it's going to be, I think.
Mm. It's yeah, the- but they both suffer from the bit. Is this a common thing? Because I know I spoke to Sam. He's in the Shoot from the Hip improv, but he does stand up as well. I can't. Sam Thomas, I think, and he said one thing that's the worst thing about stand up, most of a bit of acting, is when you repeat this, when you do a monologue and you don't, and he tries to trick himself into it being a new bit by changing the order or the pacing of it, or the trick his body that it's a new bit.
I think I'm lucky because I don't get bored easily with stuff. So I find a new thing every day, not in the words or changing the order. Certainly with monologues, is I'll maybe find a new thought process or I think I just trick myself into thinking I am saying it again for the first time, even though you're still taking words out your brain that you've learned.
Hmm.
But I find that with some actors actually, when they do stand up, and I've taught them, is that it doesn't sound like it's origin. They're doing it for the first time when they do it. It sounds rehearsed and read. So they need to have to actually then say it. This is only in stand up, not when they're acting. It's like they've got to. It sounds scripted. It doesn't sound like I'm talking to you right now. It sounds like I'm talking to you right now, okay, Marvin? And this is what my act is rather than I'm talking to you right now, Marvin. Here's my show. There's a remove. And
Yeah,
I think it's because they almost kind of put a fourth wall up.
yeah. Ah, yes, yes, yes. And it's hard for them to break through that.
Yeah, yeah. But it's just, you know, practicing what you're used to and it can change. And there's loads of good actors that are good stand-ups. But I think you're more likely to get good stand-ups or good actors than the other way around.
Oh, oh, okay.
Yeah. Not
It's
necessarily good at shifting focus, but good at being natural, certainly on film, because they're used to that.
and what about their Do people from acting, are they better performers at the start in terms of when they're doing act outs?
Um, yes, but not necessarily as funny. Yeah. I'm not talking about anyone in particular. This is from years of teaching. So I would say that it just seems like they've got the confidence. But I think as well, and maybe myself, I started as an actor, but maybe, there's a kind of sense of I should be good at this because I've got all this stage experience.
Ah,
And then I think sometimes what they do is they play a comedian role rather than being themselves.
okay, okay. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's very interesting.
Interesting. But yeah, I find that what I find interesting from there is all the techniques they got with movement. And I think as a stand-up, when I'm on
Yeah.
stage, to know what they do in terms of movement, the lighting, all these different
Yeah.
things. And
Even vocal work's very good though, because what people don't realize is you still have to do a certain amount of, you, you know, um, you have to use a lot of vocal skills and project. Still on the mic, you don't want to be super loud, but you still have to have a little bit of power there and energy behind that voice, which I think drama school's good for as well.
hmm. But who are cooler people, comedians or actors?
Cooler, did you say?
Yes.
Comedians without a doubt. Oh my God, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I find so from my experience of being in the clown schools and the theatre schools, people are more, yeah, comedians are more raw. I feel like
Yeah. Yeah.
we're more, yeah, we're quite raw. I feel that comedians are more real. I think actors can
Yeah.
be more polite and more like well
I find
mannered.
actors can take themselves more seriously more as well. And I mean, I'm being very general here, but I think what it is as well is that when you do an acting tour, you go away for 3 months and you're traveling and staying with people and they're your family, you don't, they're everything. And then as soon as it's over, you think, oh, I don't know what to talk about to them now. And it sort of fitters out. But with stand up, you continually got that community because we're always meeting each other and gigging with each other, especially the Scottish circuit. It's just, it's 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 brilliant. I mean, that's one of the things I really love about my classes is there's people that are 18, people that are like 70, and they're pals. There's people that are like very rich, and there's people that are, absolutely skint, and they've got loads in common. It's just that's what I love about it the most. That's if I didn't do it, that's the thing I'd miss the most is the people, without a doubt.
Ooh. Yeah, that's one of the things that I do love about stand-up as well. When I've been away from stand-up for the last 3 months, I've actually missed the people and the people in comedy, the shows that I run. But I just it's even though I don't like everyone in stand-up, I just like the fact that we as stand-ups, we're from a diverse different background, we're quite raw
Yeah.
and there's so many wild people in it that I love.
Yes, yes, yeah. I mean, there's some total arseholes as we all know, but that isn't everything as well, isn't it? And if you do a gig and there's people on you don't want to be on with, don't worry, another nice gig will come along in a minute. It's just you're not stuck with these people for more than an evening, really.
I think, but I think comic shows are quite honest that there is a lot of bad things and good things in it. I found that with, oh, this sounds so general, but this is my experience of being in
Yeah,
those, that they'll be a bit more, they're not, comedians will be real about humans' weakness and the truth about humans, whilst I feel that the people that I've been involved with in acting schools won't be
yeah,
as honest about those things.
yeah. I mean, sometimes I feel that actors are a bit more aware of filters, as
Yes,
in
yes, yes,
they'll be nice to your face and bitch behind your back.
yes, yes, yes.
Comedians, they'll probably just not be nice to your face as well, which
Yeah.
sometimes you don't prefer that, but you do feel there's a sort of sense of truth to it, isn't there?
Yes, that's it. That's precisely what I was trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we've been through the same things, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. But I love the technicalities in theatre. But with writing and is the writing also so different in theatre, stand up, and poetry? Because you've got quite a diverse, different background.
Yes, yes. Um, so poetry, I think poetry's really helped me in writing stand-up because it's all about, well, certainly my poetry's about brevity and why say 15 words when there's maybe three that would do, or Do you know, I like to get straight to the point. Also, I like to make my poetry very accessible in that way of, I don't know, it's just not very clever. It's not like flowery words and that. It's like you read it, you know exactly what I'm meaning in that sentence, And you have to be picky in what words you pick. Why pick this very boring word when you can have a amazing word? Do you know what? Why pick a word that begins with B when you can have one that's alliteration and another C, if you see what I mean? And also for scanning and rhythm, and you just hear it, it just sounds good in a joke, or it doesn't sound good in a joke. And I think that's the poetry. I think the poetry helps that
Ah, okay.
definitely. But poetry, what I like about it and what I miss about doing as many not doing as many poetry gigs is it can have heart. And sometimes in stand up, I miss having that heart. Because stand up is all about the laugh, regardless. Doesn't matter what you're saying, we don't care unless it's going to be funny. Poetry, I can say something about what I love or what I worried about more.
Hmm.
I can let the audience know I care about this, and you know, which maybe is a bit more wanky, but yeah. Does that answer the question? I think it.
You said that poetry helps with hitting the beats in comedy. That's what I got from it.
What you said. I'm going to say that next time someone asks.
Because you mentioned with alliterations, the same letters,
Yes,
and it puts it in your mind. And
definitely, definitely. And poetry, you can cheat a bit because you can just read it if you want. You don't have to learn it, but it's so much better if you learn it and perform it. It should be a performance. A lot of poets, certainly when I started, they would read their poem from the page like this, and it really put you to sleep, rather than reading the poem from the page and it put it's just you could write the shitest poem, but if you perform it well, it would be better than a brilliant poem not performed well, which is a bit like stand up
oof. Whoa!
sometimes. It is though. The really confident people trick us into us thinking, "Oh wow, they're great," and then think, "Wait a minute, what did they say? It was funny." But really shit people with good jokes won't go down as well as a good performer with bad jokes.
But bloody hell, good material helps make your job 100 times easier.
If you've got
My God.
both, then brilliant. Yeah. I think if you've already got the performance skill and your material shite, you've got a chance. But if you've got no presence, no charm, nothing, then it's harder.
Yeah. If- Is that what you've noticed in the ones that have really stood out in comedy? They've,
Um, I think I think I notice the ones most who don't realize how funny they are and how I think I'm impressed by the people who they don't know how well, wait a minute, maybe I'm sort of contradicting myself, but they they don't realize they're funny yet. But when they get laughs, they realize what made people laugh and they can do it again. That's where the clever is. Okay, making people laugh when I'm teaching people, but if they don't know why that happened, where it happened, and how it happened, how to read do it, then maybe you won't be a comedian.
I've heard this from a lot of comics on the podcast. Is that sometimes when someone's too talented, it can be a bit of a struggle for them because they're not willing to put the work in to try and understand why they've.
I don't know. I think I would say that for an athlete or someone like that, but I mean, maybe I'll go away and think about this and realize I agree. But at the moment, I'm thinking, I think if you get accolades because you're already good and people are loving you, you're more likely to, especially if you're earning, you're more likely to go and do it because you can very quickly get ahead.
Oh, okay.
Especially, I think you've got more chance of getting ahead when you're new, when you're just, people are just, you could be as good as somebody that's gone 10 years that's not been discovered yet, but you might not be, but because you're new, you've got that rawness and freshness, people kind of want you.
It's an interesting thing what you said there because I remember this was a couple of days ago. So we've all had these nightmare gigs, Viv, and
Oh
we.
God, I
But I'll tell you my story, and then you
go
tell
for
me some of your nightmare stories. So
it.
it was in a rough part of Croydon, and
Right.
well, most of Croydon's
So Croydon.
Croydon, yes,
Yeah.
and it was in a pub, and effectively, so they said that the sign up and they're going to do everything around 7:30. So I come in a bit early, try and work things out. But I go in there, and it was a completely wild pub. Like I only came in 50 minutes there, and the person who's organised it wasn't there, and he came in late with them, and that's often a sign that it's going to be a bad gig. And it was because they put the all the amp and the sound equipment right by the door, and there was no running order. The guy who's running it didn't really. Well, fine. I'll say this anyway. He ran another gig at another place in Croydon, and he was charging tickets, but he didn't pay the acts. But then he messaged to try and get a replacement act, £50, and then someone caught him, and then then got all sorts of kerfuffle. But now he's setting up another night, and yeah, it was dreadful. He didn't care. The host didn't really care. Came in late. There's no running order. He's introducing acts as soon as they're on stage. They're saying all sorts of dodgy things. Oh, it was a horrible atmosphere from the start, and I was scared. I was thinking, oh shit, it's going to be one of those dodgy ones. A lot of us do terrible, and yeah, I didn't do too well either. But there was one thing that amazed me, that there was two comedians that did amazingly. You know what you said about star quality and confidence and
Yeah,
presence?
yeah, yeah.
There was this guy, I can't remember what his name is, and I need to find his name. Big black guy, very confident,
Uh-huh.
and he did absolutely brilliantly. I can't remember. He's just so confident on stage, such good presence. People liked him, and he just took charge of the room, even though it was a difficult gig. And he
Right.
stormed it. He made what a difficult gig look like it was a piece of piss.
Oh,
And he's
right.
definitely someone that's not been going for a while, but he just had the confidence, and
Yeah.
he just had the innermost belief. And I actually learned something from him in there, in that even though, as you said, even the material, some of it wasn't that good, but he just carried on with it. I had bits that I was annoyed because I wanted to prepare the gig before to develop it, and
Yeah.
I hesitated to do it, but he just went through it. So that's there you go. That he won them over through his presence, his yeah. It was a great bit to watch, and you can see I see it all the time as a promoter. You'll see acts that have been going for 6 months or a year, a couple of years, and they'll be way above those that have been going longer. They just have something about them.
And
I don't know what it is.
I suppose this goes back to your point you made actually about some people have got all the talent, but they don't do anything with it. I suppose that does happen, doesn't it? Because they kind of do, they just get fed up. They just can't be bothered. They're not actually, they're really good and then they do it and they get it and they think, oh, well, and then they move on. So maybe that does happen a lot. Because I have definitely taught people who weren't that good, but they just worked hard and they got good. And I think it's because they were intelligent. They weren't necessarily that funny on stage. They weren't that good on as a performer, but they found out who they were. They loved doing it and they kept doing it.
Yeah,
I think these are the ones I probably admire the most because there's a real dedication, isn't there? And um, love with it, I suppose.
I think it also helps drive them, doesn't it? When people say all these different things, it makes them like, well, I'm going to show it. I'm going to.
Probably, yeah. And I think sometimes it's also because sometimes they're pals with other people that are doing it in this class, and then so they're doing it as well, but they've got the intelligence to know, right, so that's what works from watching other people and they just learn on the job. I think you can definitely learn to be funnier and from just practicing and doing it again and again, and you start kind of catching on to what it is about you that can make people laugh.
And is it more getting comfortable on stage and being whoever it is you are?
I think so. It's also about being prepared to take risks and kind of not give a shit if the audience aren't going to like you. I mean, obviously, the audience have to like you to find you funny, but I think you have to be prepared to take risks with things that might not be funny. You're not sure yet, but you're going to push you.
Hmm.
I don't mean risky material. I just mean risk whether it's funny or not, if you know what I mean, or slapstick or something crazy.
Taking chances.
Yeah.
One thing I did find, so I've been away from stand-up doing a theatre course, and I've sort of got back into it recently. And one thing I want to work on is I'm a good clown. I'm good at being funny without the jokes per se. I'm good at being
Right.
an idiot on stage.
That is great.
And my hosting needs a bit of work because I can be a bit awkward. So this year, what I want to focus on is I want to focus on getting the. I know I'm shit at the writing. I know it's a
Mm.
bad thing, and people that don't like me coming have made me aware of it. So I thank them for it and the hosting. So one thing I'm trying to do is I've got so I know someone who's a good writer, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
spend a lot of time working it, but I'm gonna get him to help me out with the jokes because he's good at
Right.
that, so he can help
Yes.
work on my weakness on it.
So also though, if they, it's a bit like, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day and give a man a fishing rod and he'll eat for a year or whatever. I think it happens with jokes where if someone helps you, but if you see how they write, then you start, thinking, so that when they wrote that joke, this is what they did, and they looked at that angle. My husband, right, we've been married for 20 odd years, says that he thinks he's that how funny he is because of me, because he says he sees what
Uh,
I do and now he does it. But then I see
uh,
what he does and I do it. So it kind of feeds off each other. So I think what will happen is that is great because it's good to have someone to bounce off. But then you'll be working these tools and you'll get better at it.
yes, 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 yes.
I would tell you the best advice I got ever from someone about hosting. I hadn't done much hosting at the time, and they said to me, what I really like about you as a host is you're not always funny, but we always like you. And actually, at first, I thought, not always funny. But then I thought about it and thought, that's really nice because it actually made me relax to not even worry. Because I thought, well, if funny's going to like me, they're still going to, I mean, as a host, I will, you know, be funny. That's what I'm aiming for. But it just made me feel so much more relaxed that I could just be myself
Yeah.
and just talk to people.
And then the comedy came.
And the comedy came, the fairy came and told me what to say. Yeah.
Now, for anyone that's listening in the course in our podcast right now, and they're like, Viv, she is a G. I should have known it just like that.
Viv Gee
If they
in
want
the
to,
house.
yeah.
You do that. I'll look silly if I do that.
That means you should do
Is that
it.
it? Is that it? Was that what you do?
Yes, yeah.
What am I waving? Watch the Zoom will do it now. It's like I'm having a wank in the air.
So,
Even sounded like that. Right, okay. Serious. Is
so
it trying to click your fingers, but it's not working?
yes, I think that's what it is. No, that
Did
definitely
that scare
looks
you?
like it.
It didn't look bad.
So, for anyone that's listening right now, how do they find out about you, and what is the thing? Yeah, what is the biggest tip that you can give a comedian from all your years of teaching comedians and from being a comedian yourself that can help them get better at that craft?
Um, oh, that's a good question. That's one you didn't give me in advance. That is a good question though. What is my tip? And I'll go away and think of a better tip. But the tip I'll give you now is um stick to the same material for a while. Especially when you just start. A lot of newbies think, oh, people have heard that. Get over yourself. Only other acts have heard it. Audience, just do it. If people hear the same joke that you've done before, but they can see the difference and how it's got better, they're more impressed by you doing a new joke that's just as shit as the last joke that you've not worked on. So stick to the same stuff, but be prepared to do tweaks and look for little better words and better intonations, better phrasing, better pauses. Um, when you've got a joke in a sentence, try and have the punchline in the last word. Can you have another punchline within the same sentence if you just pause before you say the next word? I would say do as many new materials as you gigs as you can. Um, and then go back to them and do the same stuff till you think it's good enough to do at gigs. I don't know. There'll be loads of things I could say. I can't think of anything else.
So,
But read Adam Bloom's book. It's absolutely brilliant. And yeah. And also, I think, and this is like goes without saying, but being a dick to folk doesn't get you further ahead. Do you know, if you see your friend doing really well in comedy, that doesn't mean you're not doing well. It just means they are. you know, because I think sometimes people focus more on what other people are doing rather than just getting on with what they're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's bloody hard though sometimes. But no, I
It's
think
bloody hard. I'm saying that to myself as well because it's like, it doesn't matter what people get. It doesn't matter about our old college mates that are in Hollywood and stuff. It's like, well, good for them. You know, it doesn't mean they've got what I would have had. Never means that, really. Actually, we're both up to the last two. But but yeah.
okay. So that's what you know where to find her, and you can also find her on Viv Gee on all the
Oh
socials.
yes. All the socials. I've not got a website or a page because I still in my head I'm old school and think that's conceited. But it isn't. It's business and you should have. But I just yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, which I still don't know how that works. I just I don't get it. I thought it was just about photos, but I don't really put any on it.
Well, you could get a fan base. Just go in the bikini. I don't know.
I know, I know. I'd have to do something, wouldn't I? That yeah, that is something I didn't say. Is that I think if I started comedy now, I would have found it much harder. But if I started comedy now, I suppose in my 20s, I would probably have embraced that as well, the putting online content on and doing sketches and doing stuff like that. And then I would have gone from that approach. Um, but now the idea of doing that is like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm just too scared.
Well, guys, you know where to find out about Viv. She can make your she can make your joke turn from an ugly duckling into a swan.
Oh, there you go. But like a swan, you're still working hard underneath.
Yes, I mean look at the wings they got. My God,
Oh,
they're muscle swans.
yeah, yeah. And they can deal with any heckler.
Yes, I wouldn't want to get in the way of their wings.
Yes.
That,
Yeah.
that noise they make. Oh,
Was that the noise I made? God, I thought that was my internet. But yeah.
or both.
Yes. But yes, it's been very lovely to speak with you, by the way.
Thank you. It's
Yes.
what's the slang Scottish term for it? Was a great chat.
You're a good cunt.
Right, that's what it is. Okay, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. You know where to find out Viv G. You know where to find out about me. The next episode, I'm talking to a Spanish comedian that runs comedy shows in Barcelona,
Oh,
which I heard
nice.
has a great scene. I heard Michelle Wolf lives there,
Oh,
from a
wow.
comedian at a gig yesterday, and you guys can stalk her there. No, and I'll see you guys soon.
Bye.